What cannon fired this whiskey projectile henceforth? A fence of dagger, a hedge of razor blades, or a sign of adder's clipped head with an insalubrious dependency? Don't pencil me too fine a fettle. I would prefer to set course for coarser canyons and creeping regions that slam sod into the bottler's bowl, banging on in the night about precincts and wire toffee stratagem boffin crystals and cross-light wheel bondsmen, trimming each extruded sliver into a braided twine and laying the spun splines across all rough marks and smooth troughs. I begged for the morning to bake me into curdled spats, prancing along like a meat-hinged daffodil, weaning gone to the birds, but I milked no savage grit into the camera, lest the viewers grow overly titillated. Meat shelter brand me. In silk shocks and stilted flocking, that bake endless and reverse upon the tarmac, until all boats sail as one through unified skies of bolts and shadow. I had a climate bruise in last August in the first, but I wore it worst, and so never found it featured abroad. I canceled my lengthwise cathode emissions in a 1-2 punch of bundle, twigs and scrunch, and crundle mitts and brunch. And that's when the emitter bit of the silt fell through. I had hired a second emitter darkly, but suspected it were part of someone else's crew all along. Perhaps that's why every second release seemed stunted, as if some sought to stultify the wire reduction phase of my principal reductions in flume emissions. Is that enough tawdry mishaps for one shore-leaving leprosy annulment glyph, or hyped up harpoon halide diaphragm, lest we die? Diagonal diagrams leaving eggless abatement, or basing bar chords, smorgasbords on the pine-flecked fjords, boating oars and harping holds, hoedowns far above any recrimination, destiny fallacies or fallacious basement crescendos, or I'll have your wire mother for breakfast and wrap you in doilies. I had supposed I were destined for the crawlies and the toolies, but one fat afternoon, my angry mother sat me down and had it out with me verbally and morally. A reneged toad struck a renegade pose and positioned herself as an inveigled spray, or some kind of dappled tissue splatter, a clattering of drums, and then a pure silence separated out into its constituencies as though maneuvered through a sonic prism. The schisms of photonic eroticism belayed like a frayed order against the wall of your cacophonous creameries and decadent descendancies and impending predilections, wafting to and fro like some kind of one-in-one bunion stapled to a hair dispatchery. Bouncing like a hatched fisherman, I trundled my bound collection of bundle cabling and frayed masonry, crumbling wires of vital ire and recumbent blunders, made thunder in the night by the heat of the light, camphor that trends shreddingly through your dimmed vestibule. Ah, the frantic mewling of unspooling dread in my heart gives me leaden feet and yet urges me to tread. What briar of unthinkable thickness does spread its thorn-edged limbs before me? Is it your heart or your mind, or better not to even contemplate such reckless counterfactuals? Is it both, my dear broken child? Oh, you wounded bird, dragging your shattered frame to the side of the road to die? Is it inspiring or devastating that you crawl? Towards what, might I ask, away? from that which I can all too clearly see. But how can it escape you that the fate you crawl away from follows you in tandem? How can it escape you that the only direction left for you to go is one that your tiny literal bird brain cannot fathom? These fears, however well founded, are soon forgotten as life pours gushingly out of the slight bundle of feathers and pain it had until that very moment contained them. But the permanence of the lost echoes like a cry of torment in that valley, and I never stopped hearing the ringing of those waves, because each next death is but one link in a chain that has preceded us to such an extent that we can scarcely hope to define the boundaries of what are in fact our own limitations. How desperately frantic we must be in the end, or how hollowly resigned. However we reach that final point, we have fallen so far already. How could the impact that marks the end be anything but a blessing to be savored? I favor my pause, and so I am already leaking. If you want to embellish decrepitude in this way, I offer a falling feature: prize patrol, vice grip phantasm, copper replication, or balsamic magnetron electrolysis. Either one is a bargain and a holy gift, and whatever your bleeding heart relatives try to make you believe.
Hello there. I am currently disabled. Do you sell daffodils at this establishment? Such was on the mind of every likely register in Cass City, the place where find accountants go to get paid. I've been scrubbing on the local news bar for 6. When I found a secret 7th tucked away under a hobble pulling out my blanket, I brushed quickly around its outlines, confirmed my deepest suspicions. I am a goat nay, I said, or bar, and then I ate a tin can. Next thing I knew, someone had unlocked my keyhole iris, and I was now standing on the lunar surface Subway sandwiches in my hand, and 4 more straps in imposing X's across my back. The time it come, the battle with Moonbase Jacobs had been put off for over 450,000 years, but no more armed only with my 6 Subway sandwiches and my 4-2 gumps, like gump show lewdiness for titted toot, a inch ever closer to the horror. Come out if you can. Poultry base guardsman base soul is more like it, for I shall have snack of your ganglia, while your heads are just a little danglier than they are right now because of the incision I'm about to make to your face. But no answer was forthcoming, and no din of sonic reports blasted out on the news. Very well, I thought I'll foster my own embankment, shrinking from the task a little, but shirking it not at all. I was one of those rough ride and road rangers from back in the day, only completely out of my element here on the move. I lifted up my bracelet pewter and pressed the button about figure out how to get into the moon base. Analyzing replied to familiar robotic voice. This ought to be good. I thought you can get in the moon base by going through the entrance to the moon base. Thank you, bracelet cuter, you really are the smartest way of learning the same, I said, turning in a semicircle and waving my arms frantically for reasons that are beyond me even now. Now to find that entrance. I had a strong suspicion that if I looked for it, I might increase the chances of coming across it, considered standing out with a basement in my heart. I tried to climb to my spiritual attic, but fell face first to the pavement. What was me? I thought until I saw a curious height, a tiny spinny metal thingy like a valve that you would see. Probably just valve, actually. Could this be the illustrious spigot that will open the door of my dreams and allow me to slay those who ruled a lunar base, Jacobson or whatever? Was that what I said earlier? No, I remember now. It was just moon base. Jacobs, I've been training for this mission for 455,000 years, so I think I know what the name of the moon base is, and I do, and it is Moonbase Jacobs. And that's not really the important part right now. The important part was this was probably the door, so I reached down to the valve and I spun it, and it spun. I hit the Pater jackpot when the wheel spun and landed on Open the Hatch, and it painfully reminded me that it was in fact a hatch and not a door. When the suction of space started to launch office furniture from the space base, Jacobs, at my face, as though I were being blasted with a couch cannon or a desk railgun, and my body was struck at that time by much debris. Some of it of considerable mass velocities, far over what the human body could withstand, and I did explode into smithery chunks. They weren't smithereens, but they were smithery, and I was nearby when it happened, because it happened to me, so it was especially devastating for myself. I saw the corpses of my enemies float out of Moonbase Jacobs, and so I had been smashed to millions and millions of particulates in the ejector of the vacuum cock. I knew that the universe had something special for me in store yet to come. Marshalling all of my intents will, I commanded my scattered and desecrated particulate to refashion themselves into an elegant lunar bee. And I felt that the sinews wrapping around my tendons, and I was like... I thought those were two different things, and then I'm like, oh, because it really made my butt feel weird when it happened at my butt, so it was like a very strange time. But then there was he, floating out of the airlock, the leader of the whole lunar base command unit, Admiral Emperor Positron. I beckoned him towards me and he winced in confusion. Who was this towering reknit of sinew lunar being before him? I had to reveal myself. I am Lord Emperor Electron. He screamed in rising agony and raced at me. I knew only too well what would happen if we were to make contact. So I pulled out my super duper D-duper fan blade and spun it on the tip of my finger, burst its bun and round, and then he's like, oh crap, because he couldn't escape. He couldn't get away from the bully of the wind. It blew them back into the sensor bar, which sucked him in, and I flipped the panel shut, slicing the valve with my double disc and using the fan to close it, because that looked really cool. And if everyone inside, which was just a guy but also a couple of his loved ones, and they were pounding on the hatch and bagging through the porthole window for me to release them. But they knew what I had in mind. Now inside the Moonbase Jacobs, that will be really not good for you, up until I came here just now. You are proud to be running this moon base, and now it shall be known as Admiral Emperor Positron's Folly. And, maybe I can update the word folly to a better word that people use now, because it's like the future, not just the present day. So, maybe we'll call it Admiral Emperor Positron's epic fail. Disgrace, dude, bro, because it's 400 years ago is chic again. Either way, you guys are going to get doomed. And after I made this speech, I realized that they couldn't actually see what I was saying or hear, because I had already blown them up with the decompression chamber gas feature of the big old button that was unprotected outside their moon base. So then I was able to reverse it and have them all just sucked out into space, just as clean as you'd like. It was fresh start here at Moonbase, what was formerly Jacobs, but is now Little Base Depsilon Pepsilon C Cheddy 5. We take lots of serious moon-based readings here, including how do we appease the dark god of the moon who lives deep below in a cellar where we harness his ever-decaying tissues for their radioactive properties, and actually power the entirety here of moon-based Epsilon Pepsilon. And that's what we do. We harness the power of the evil lord deep under the moon, and there's no way he ever gets out of his giant chain shackle things. I hear him down there constantly rattling them around and banging them in the walls. But we're all his dark lunar god nature. He is still being of at least some blood and mostly bone, and not a lot of flesh, but he does sound louder. Is there some reason it should be getting? Like, the sound of his chain should keep getting, like, progressively much louder. 'Cause I've never had it do that before. Hey, what's that? We drove north embedded in a manger of long-range microwave ovens, and roving range is often in the form of a grill paddock iron billet. Expansive train critter frolic embellishments. At least at the morning and most at the dawn. Is this what you crawled here on your kneecaps to say to me? Or is you just happy at seeing happy at land to be here? I would have a crumpled celery stalk in my debased frame if I made my own tin foil caps for the summer months. But here in the abdominal times we do have our fair share of focal lesions on our separating sores on all parts of our thorax. So I am starting to wiggle slightly laterally as I crawl on my kneecaps to better distend my in-point fashioning of stakeholders in crate dressers and brick of brackets sorting agents that work automatically using a steam input. Only you think we've cracked the heart of steam-powered machine learning using Cadillac radishes and cantaloupe Adirondacks, and we had a durable notion of some kind of sacrificial yield and went none among the naval ranks stepped forward, so we weren't able to proceed with that plant. So we had a different sand embankment that was a dude as part of a series of dooms, and each doom was more serious than the previous tunes, leading several on the team of esteemed colleagues to point out how they were rather be embroiled colleagues. And they had lots of ham-fisted discussions in the laboratory parlour about this brocade or that brocade, and it's like if we have one emblem in common. It's our incredible desire to pee on the truth. And if we don't have that. You don't have a country anymore. But so what I propose is that we embargo all miscreant Dawny, all catchers intel, such a time as we can find out what the heck is going on, because my insistence that we bury all curly Q-tails upward seems to spark some grievance in the Earthworm Committee. And this is fair. This is what it means to live in a democracy. We have always been at war with the earthworms. Junior Sprinkler Sergeant at arms frog-leg at legs and depth charge at kneecaps has shredded for me. So my leg ligaments are actually all well to do as the present day. What I would like to delegate now is the raster employment of ointment crystals and a debasement lozenges that you keep cremating to your Dark Lord. We did keep a thing like that at one point in its trunk on the moon, but the world is a small place and the moon is even smaller. So we're thinking about loading all of our toxic murder space gods, along with all our nuclear warheads, onto a very, very safe, exploding, spontaneously disassembling rocket from, and I won't name the American aeronautics firm responsible for developing this. They're calling it a doomsday accident for us, but their stock prices seems to anticipate the outcome of this attempt, but we're still going to try because it could save us 15% by switching to Geico. I sheltered in place for 14 years, and then I sheltered in Steam for 60 years, and I felt way more at home. Either expended 5 years stretch there, where I issued all forms of shelter, and was pelted by the lightning bolts and zucchini bolts that came from the sky, and I thought this was paying my dues. But when I got back to society, I saw I actually owed $10,513 that the dues were only payable in monetary fashion. So I was deeply displeased at the extremities I had to go to finance apricot disassembly targets and target repurposing peach safety deposit boxes for crenellated repair distances that you could not find with LiDAR. But you could line with Findar and you would locate them every time you would seek them every bucket. You could have tiny elements of flannel that mix in with your foil aluminum. I found a minimum granulated defenestration could go a long way in appealing a distanced discographies through grappling hooks and banister knurling, where you put the beaded end of the railing's edge in a position to do razor harm to a tiny slice of life. And then you can feast on that like a drunken mosquito until your owls pop out your ears in public, and everyone sees you for what you truly are. And that is why the radishes come home to roost at midnight, because the scarecrow walks again, and all the things that you used to think were just banks hidden inside little lockers where no one would think to look for them, or actually tiny museum models of proposed wings that will never be built now because of your malfeasance and your refusal to engage. Honestly, with the process that you find yourself involved in, and it's like, who gives you the right? And I'm going to tell you lewd. Crandall Mankey Weather. He works each in indent to pour you in to have farms that grow laser manufacturing. Intel, the lasers that they grow under their manufacturing process, are able to grow the lasers themselves. And so you get it, self-sustaining, self-perpetuating complexity hinge, right? It's like a deflection dimensionality pump that soaks up everything in the world of life and lights up everything in the soak of human world. And so we piled the light we had up, and when it reaches a critical mass, it becomes 7, and we had only 6, so we knew we hadn't reached that point yet. So we found a new method of actually multiplying the sums rather than an additive, a simply additive method. In this unlocked the exponential growth that we like to see from lizard brains, and frog on lung tissue that we collected we had. We realized not paid the refrigeration bill, so it was not as pleasant as we had. Perhaps hopefully began to collect these specimens, but we took great pride in knowing that we did not remember. We even had it until the smell became impossible to ignore, because that shows a level of detachment to any true scientist should aspire to with all their heart and fury we did when Slaughter the Bugs happened. It doesn't matter how hapless you are, but heaping a gravy ladle skyward will always get you with the same number of frontal pens and bungled bungalows, which we tripped over in the night, cause we grew massive without knowing it. And we're like, this is our chance, and so we just began kicking buildings like soccer balls until we noticed our big toes, which were at that point very quite big, where black and blue with the bruising of the building beat downs. And we were like, oh gross. But then I crept into a locker stall where all the finest ointments and liniments for feet were kept. And I stomped it flat and got a million glass shards stuck in my foot, and I didn't care because I was so huge. My feet were so freaking big, it still wasn't that bad. And I was like, eat it. Ointment, liniment bottles you done been crushed by the giant foot from space. And then I turned back into bugs and floated to Galaxy 9, where they kept all the folders of redactable student handbook art that were unsuitable for lesser galactical galacticies. Because the salactic catalytic converter was a cedar salicylic acid, we had a cedar chest full of apple cider, and I poured this now liberally all over my spaniel waffle, which bridged and arched with its anger at the distressing lotion. I know, heaped upon it like scorn on a dead horse's neck. And then all of these frogs came, and then Zera's pigs left forward, and we were just juggling back and forth as though we weren't trapped in some kind of cosmic ping-pong raffle ball with sports and news on the sixes, and I was ready to vomit. But I realised, to my chagrined terror, that my guts were like already outside of me, and that nothing I could possibly do ever again in Olive recorded history can be described as vomiting, and that's when I died. Seconds later, the screen came up and my butt couldn't fell open, and I crapped out my butt. I was like, I can't puke, but I can cramp myself. It seemed really uncool, but it was. And that's just another uncool aspect of what it was like when I died. There's not much I could have done about it, so I tried to let myself off the hook. Easy, but it's a very sharp hook, and it's kind of in there. I think it could do some very serious damage if I try to get myself off of it. At this point, I've kind of become resigned to the hook, but I mean, I've been completely blown to bits and have been killed for so long ago that it's like, who knows? Right for all. I know I'm really just a jar on the shelf of some cosmic energy with boats for a brain, and he just thinks I'm in there, and that's why I'm saying all this stuff. savage Groupon get me out to a goof troop kind of innuendo curtain rod that did strike back like a lightning bolt. Who heard you talk about how lucky you were for just barely avoiding it? So we strolled into the mall parking lot and everyone was laughing at us because we had no cars and they could quite easily tell quickly. They formed a protective circle and drove us off the movie theatre parking lot land by night. We plotted our revenge, taking long steel notebooks and putting rulers next to paper and nodding sagaciously. I had 16 mostly empty spools of thread sitting on a finely engineered mechanism on the shelf. And this gave me idea lifting the mechanism I used. I thought a mesh of thrash and bashing crashing up all around me like a crumpled tissue. This might just do a certain activity that one might find mildly tricky, and if it could do that, oh boy, wouldn't that be something. The next day I crundled up in my dormouse-shaped truck, which always scared people until they realised it was far too small to be a real dormouse, slamming shut the giant mouse and your door. I clambered to the bumper vehement and began wriggling to and fro, spreading what seems to be fish oil in my motions, sell me a side of Glenbow and tone from the floor. As at this point, what seemed to be about 5 gallons of viscous and fragrant fish oil pooled from small pores on my neck around me on pavement. In the distance, I heard someone begin to howl and do the rodeo. Zach! The Zodiac Master had come back in full force. Not now! I screamed to the heavens, forming myself into an evil submarine. I wasn't ready for this confrontation, and I knew it moments began and started later than previous moments had. But later moments started later still. So over time, I was able to work this all out into the great fabric tapestry quilt of my life. My life quilt tapestry weaving is a sort of quilt weaving tapestry that leaves me breathless. So for 17 minutes as this dangerous full bore down upon me, I turned more and more into a submarine, and right when he's going to get me, but not so close to torpedo was going to blow me up. Oh yeah, I shot a torpedo at him, and that's a kind of gave that away, but the thing is about the torpedoes thing is that it did work. Because that's why I'm telling this story, and I'm not just like a trophy on the wall of what it is. What the thing that was coming rodeos at, the Zodiac Master. Yeah, he's bad. I should tell you, you're like, probably not all that, and president. I defeated this guy because you don't know the legend of Rodeo Jack or Zodiac Master Rodeo Chat or Rodeo Zodiac Master Jack, whichever order you put the words in a mouse to the same thing. This guy was a local cult leader and a frozen oat salesman back in the war, and he knew his hand from a hole in the grenade. And so he would come along and be like 4, and people would scream and duck to not get hit by a golf ball, and then he would take those people and put them into his trolley cart, melt them down into lamp oil, and sell them to Victorian on lamp-lighters in the 1800s and 50s. And so, what we had to realise at that time was that he didn't crave restitution. He demanded insulin, so we hounded him to an early grave and a better's prison and a popper's pony, and we were like stopping all the gaps and shushing the presses up because all the stuff was, like, basically not that great for us or him or... And we made him see it that way by not let him see ways that things could be which was produced the same effect as if he was in agreement. And isn't that the important part? I quickly referenced my position in a stack of relative positions and found that I was actually in my current location. The power of tabular informative systems could not be gameset. Certainly not in a swiping injunction left from a puddle cradle that I didn't even know I had submerged, so why they're looking at me like that? I just can't tell you I had a Fargo. I had 16 lemonade from the hassling chairpersons who didn't do their job, quite frankly. And that's why I'm here today. In my opinion, Your Honour, we had a slide whistle. What? Oh, it's a kind of lemonade sandwiching retrieval mechanism that does not function as advertised. Instead, people use use it as a kind of superior floor varnish, superior in many ways, to cram meltings or ladle spoonings, because people forget a spoon is itself a kind of ladle. So over time, the compromises reveal themselves, and I think that's why you're seeing less and less people hard at it. They're laminate flooring because they know no pain, no grain,